All right, welcome everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in. This is Dr. Homebrew. We're back here with another episode, another couple beers to judge and talk about and be friends over. And that's really what we need. You know what I mean? It's not the destination, Brian Cooper. It's the friends we make along the way that really drag us down.
I never disagreed with that.
Maybe the friends we make along the way are the destination, JP.
Maybe they're in our hearts the whole time. Maybe our friends are in our hearts.
I miss my friends.
Yeah, I don't. My friends are online anyway. It's like, what do I care?
Curmudgeon.
Yeah, it's fine with me. We were talking the other day about Taryn's work is healthcare adjacent. I mean, sort of like she works at the head office of a senior living facility. No, she works at head office for a company who owns several senior living facilities, just to be more precise. And so she might be able to get the vaccine for the COVID bullshit, and they're talking about potentially giving it to the family. And I'm like, I don't know. I'd be okay with just not. I'm going to take it. I want to take it. You know what I mean? But I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere.
Let somebody's grandma or grandpa take it before that.
Yeah, you're never going to get that, man, because there's only like 300,000 doses for California, and I guarantee you, in a state with 40 million people, there's more than 300,000 seniors in assisted living, nursing care, any of those, and they'll be the first ones to get it because they're the ones that have the most likely to die if they get it.
Yeah.
So no one else is going to get it aside the front line, like ER people and the old people, and that's going to be it.
And that's fine. And so that's really was my point. It's like, I don't care. Like,
that's cool.
I'm not doing anything. I'm itching to go out, but I'm also not doing it. So anyway, but what I do care about is 5-Star Chemicals. You go to 5starchemicals.com, learn all about them. If those are 3 or 4 words that are different to you than you've never heard before, change your mind, educate yourself, open your mind, brothers, and go to 5starchemicals.com and learn the best way to clean and sanitize your home brewing equipment, because it really is. It is the next best thing to all the professional chemicals that the commercial brewers have. So check it out, 5starchemicals.com. It's the only thing you should be using, mainly because it works, and secondarily because they're nice people.
Speaking of the friends we made along the way.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right, man. Man, wouldn't that be great if we could do HomebrewCon over again, like in Nashville? We can go. We can
man,
5-Star booth and get 5-Star stuff. That'd be tight, man.
Get hot chicken and some 5-Star stuff to like cleanse our hands after we've gotten hot chicken all over ourselves.
I was so pissed off. Like, I've been obsessed with hot chicken. Never had it my entire life, but it sounds like exactly the thing that I want to be in my life. Yeah. And when it was all that shit, I was like, I'm mad. I'm mad. So I want to do it.
We had hot wieners in Providence. I mean, like I went to the BN party in that little arcade they had it in.
Yep.
And then like right around the corner was the classic hot wieners place in Providence.
Yeah, but you put it,
we were there too.
There's an ointment that'll get rid of that. So, you're fine now.
Yeah.
It's fine now. Yeah.
Everything's worked itself out.
They applied the very finely chopped onions to that hot wiener, and it seemed to clear everything up okay.
Turns out hot chicken is the cure, but I couldn't get that, so I had to do something different.
It is really fun, man, to like go to these places, across the country that have these hyper regional foods, right? Like going to Philly and having a Philly cheesesteak.
Yeah.
I still remember that. Although, it's like Geno's or Nick's, right? And both of them are, from what I understand, both of them are like garbage. Not garbage. They're fine. They're like the McDonald's and the Burger King of Philly cheesesteaks. But at 1 a.m, there's lines down the block on either side, and they're kitty corner across each other. So it's really cool to sort of like be in that vibe. And like, so I do really miss that part about HomebrewCon and doing that stuff. But like,
Rhode Island, man.
Yeah.
That place had the most. I've never been in a state that had that much hyper local regional food. And that state's like as big as they got like 4 people that live there. It's microscopic. And they have so much crazy good regional food. It's not even funny.
Nice.
Imagine if California had that many regions, like 6,000 different regions with all that hyper regional food.
Yeah,
we don't have that.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
We just take a blend of everybody else's food.
We borrow
put kale in
Asian
it.
and
and that's it.
Spanish and mix it all
Remember
together.
Remember the time it was in Denver, but it wasn't really Denver. It was like 30 miles outside of Denver. And you had to take the light rail train into Denver. It was like 2 hours.
I missed
go to that one.
Yeah, I was like, huh.
Well, yeah. Then there was the Seattle one. Or
the Seattle one was it was like Bellevue.
Bellevue, yeah.
But it's getting bigger now, and I think that when it's in these big cities, it is a lot better. And I understand. I'm not slamming the AHA at all. I just tease them a little bit because sometimes
we love them. We want them to survive.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, let's get to our first beer. Nate, welcome back, dude.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
It's like we just saw you. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for hanging on. What kind of beer do you have for everybody? Not for me right now, but for everybody else.
Well, there is one for you, but
there's one for me. I haven't got there yet. Yeah. Amber Ale. Okay. All right. Are you a classics boy? Like, do you like the classics? You did a cream ale last time, and an amber ale. I don't know too many homebrewers who brew amber ale.
So typically I do something hoppy, something kind of on the ambery, and then something sweet. So whether it's a fruit beer or a cider, and then I got something hoppy, and then I've got something kind of, whether it's like an amber lager or an amber ale. So I've got something that's kind of red and something hoppy and something sweet. So that's a lot of my beers.
I really appreciate that approach of like, here are the three general categories I need to fill, and they kind of like I appreciate that. I think that's a cool way to look at it, because some people really are like, this needs to be this style and this style and this style, but it seems sort of like a laissez-faire. Like,
I only drink IPAs.
I'll do this.
Yeah.
Had you made an amber ale before?
I have. I haven't made this specific recipe, but I used to make a specific amber ale quite often. But it's been probably 6 or 7 years since I made that one. But that was an extract type beer. So I've gone all grain. I haven't made too many ambers. So
okay, all right. Well, good. Welcome back to the Amber Club. I personally love a good amber ale. I'm ashamed that we don't make them anymore. Right now, I'm drinking a Heretic Lager, which is a Munich style Helles.
Nice.
There you go. I just want to point that out. All right, Brian Cooper, why don't you go ahead and go? We haven't heard your voice.
Let's crack this bad boy. Actually, first, before I do that, Nate, I have some bad news for you.
Oh.
This is one of your ciders.
Oh, it's in a plastic bag. But it broke.
You did it. Now, for the people on Facebook watching it, I wanted to show this because this is a good job of packaging. It had, so we got, the other two bottles were fine. It had paper in there. So I opened it up, unearthed everything, and I was like, oh, the paper's wet. Oh, damn. And there's the smell. It smells like cider. But so you did a very good job of isolating, and when you're packaging homebrew for a competition to send in, it's wrapped with bubble wrap. You didn't really do anything wrong. The bottles were kind of all together in a big garbage bag, but they were separated by bubble wrap and bags, and then some paper. So UPS or whatever did a big jolt to this box, and just one beer died. So the one cider died, but sorry. But we have enough to judge. We'll still get that cider on, and everybody else will have it too. So, yeah. Anyway, that was the sad news, but the amber ale is being poured. The bottle had a nice fill, had a good little hiss, and in the aroma, I get a kind of a medium towards medium light maltiness with a definite caramel focus. The hops are generally citrusy and at a medium low level. That's okay. The style can allow for quite a bit of variation. There are different interpretations of amber ale. Some of them, you can go pretty hoppy with it, or you can just have it pretty mellow. The hops aren't wimpy at all. There's enough hop there where it's just kind of a balance. It's not really a malty amber ale or a hoppy amber ale. So it's a nice basic American citrusy character blended in with the malt. This medium low fruity esters, no DMS or acetaldehyde or obvious diacetyl. It smells like it's lightly sweet. Although I always wonder, can you detect sweetness with your nose? Like as humans, we are geared towards finding sources of carbohydrates, sugar, fuel for our bodies. And like you smell something that smells sweet. And sometimes it can be deceptive where you think, okay, it smells really sweet. And then you eat it and it tastes like garbage. But anyway, I digress again. So I usually, it's like, this smells like it could be sweet. And then I wait till flavor to do the real judgment on that. Appearance wise, it's a medium towards medium dark amber colored beer, which is mostly clear, only a little bit of haze in there. This one's there's a little haze. It's not super clear. You could clarify that and get it a little prettier. There's ways to do that. The head is medium low and mostly finer bubbles. It sticks around pretty well. And after a while, the one I judged last night, it faded to a collar and a cover of some kind of wispy foam. But it's appearance-wise pretty good. I would clear it up. Flavor-wise, medium caramelly malt with a lightly fruity impression. The hop bitterness is low. It's a medium low citrusy flavor with a slight bit of some resin. And then I got what came across to me as a very faint plasticky phenolic, which is kind of detracting. It's not extremely noticeable. It's a subtle thing in this beer, but it starts popping out and it keeps coming out to me as I sip it. This one's a little colder than the one I had last night, so it's not instantly grabbing me as much. But it does seem to be there. Lightly fruity ale fermentation characteristic. I mean, other than the light phenolic, it seems clean. That caramel lingers into the aftertaste. Again, this one I just took this one out of the fridge. I should have let it warm up a little more, but the one I judged last night was at a better judging temperature. Didn't get any DMS or diacetyl. There aren't a lot of big bad fermentation flaws in this beer. It's there. It's got most of the style elements you want for an amber. Mouthfeel wise, it's medium bodied with medium low carbonation, not getting any obvious warmth or astringency. It's pretty smooth. Sometimes with a phenolic beer with a little plasticky note, you get a little bit of a phenolic attack, like polyphenols are kind of a little biting. Overall impression, it's a pretty pleasant drinking amber ale. I would say it's kind of either in the flavor, the light phenolic might be covering up some of the hoppiness that I got in the nose, but it's leaning a little more towards the malt balance tilt of things. But kind of a hop head, so sometimes things that I think are not very hoppy, other people are saying, "Oh, that's really hoppy." So I'll wait to see what Brian says about that balance, and that's fine. You can have a range in this one. It's just where you want it, kind of, and where you find a good balance for your recipe. It's mostly clean. That little plasticky note detracts a little bit. I would watch for any unintended flora and fauna getting happy in your beer after cooling, other than your intended yeast strain. I would like the hops, a little bit more in this. It would a little bit higher would make me happier, but maybe not others. But I just think it would kind of balance what else is here. It's just kind of it's malty and a little sweetness in it, in the flavor. It does have a little sweetness. It doesn't dry out too much, and with an amber you want a little body there, so that's nice. Yeah, I bring up the hops just a little bit, but get kind of work on that. If there was any issues with your fermentation, I'd like to talk about how the fermentation went and how your pitch was. I know you know what you're doing. So if there were any particular issues with this, with the yeast pack, or if you did a starter, what you did there. So also, I think maybe the perceived fruitiness that I'm getting in the beer could be coming from something in the malt selections. So I'd like to know what you did there too. I landed at a 32 for this beer. I thought it was towards the lower end of very good, just generally within the style parameters, and just with a very minor little issue there detracting to me. And I'll wait to see what Brian says about it. But yeah, it's a drinkable amber ale, and needs a little touch of cleaning up and fine tuning, but it's 87% of the way there.
Awesome. All right, Shar, let's go. Follow that up, dude.
All right. Well, now that since Brian was excited to hear what I had to say, there was a lot of bottle variation between the bottle that I judged 3 hours ago and the bottle that I just opened a few, half an hour ago to pour out of this. They were like two different beers. And the one that I judged initially, so I'll be amending my score sheet a little bit on the fly here as I go. The previous one was a plastic bomb. I mean, it was overwhelming plastic. I'm sensitive to phenol, so that's probably part of it. And, spoiler alert, there's a little bit of phenol in this bottle too. But the bottle that I had opened at 3 hours back was almost undrinkably phenolic. So we'll come back to that in overall impression a little bit. But this one is significantly better. And I think that maybe the source of the phenol has to do with the bottles themselves and not the liquid, or maybe largely the bottles themselves and maybe not so much the liquid that got put in them. The one that I sampled before had a lot more hop aroma too, which is bizarre. This one did not have quite the hop aroma. It's there. There's some citrus and floral aroma, kind of at a medium to low medium level instead of the medium high in the previous example. I get more caramel malt in this. Before, Nate, you mentioned the honey malt with the last beer of yours that we had. I did make a note that there was kind of a honey-like character, and I'll be curious if honey malt makes an appearance in the malt bill. I had no esters. I had fusels a little bit in the previous one, I thought, but ultimately I think it was just it was the phenols. You're not going to have fusel is something you're going to have not from a bottle. It's going to come from your overall fermentation. I didn't get any fusel character out of this one. So I think that I was kind of just reading that out of the first one as fusels. I'm trying to figure out what that aroma is before I settled on it being plastic. But there's not really fusel in here. Yeah. And I actually, my partner who hates beer, I had her take a smell the previous bottle, and she's like, "Smells like bourbon." Like, oh, that's interesting. And I didn't get that, but it's just kind of again, not to slam you here, but it's just an example of how you can have significant bottle variation, especially when it comes to things like phenol sometimes. So I gave the aroma 6 out of 12. Really, I might even go a little bit higher on this one because the previous bottle didn't really have any caramel character in the aroma, or a very low caramel. This one definitely has a little more caramel, which you want in the amber. A little more hop aroma would be nice. Appearance 3 out of 3, copper color, crystal clear. Head is low and persistent. Flavor, gave it 9 out of 20. Initial impression is malt with low caramel. The bitterness balances in mid palate. I think the bitterness level on this is fine, as far as I'm concerned. The previous one said the phenol became overwhelming almost immediately. In this sample, there's some phenol, I think, still at a low level, but it's not, I wouldn't consider it overpowering. And I do get some kind of citrus hop flavor, and there was really no hop flavor in the previous bottle at all, but there's definitely some hop flavor from this bottle. Well attenuated, the finish is moderately long and kind of balanced toward the citrus hop. So again, 9 out of 20 for flavor. Mouthfeel, 5 out of 5. Body's medium. Carbonation's medium. It's neither creamy nor astringent. There's maybe some slight warming, which probably comes from having it be the last of 3 beers that I judged right before eating. I don't think this is really a alcoholic level beer that's going to cause significant warming. Overall impression, gave it 5 out of 10 for a total of 28, which is good. I will ignore the comments that I had written to the bottle that was overwhelmingly phenolic. And, I think there may have been a phenol issue in the fermentation in general, but given the wild variation between bottles, I suspect that it just came down to bottling. It looked like a new bottle, but just basic bottle tips. Excuse me. You want to try to use new bottles when possible. If you're going to reuse older bottles, make sure they're really clean. Don't put them in the dishwasher like I used to do. All the dishwasher does is it won't get everything out of the bottle, and anything that's left, the heating cycle won't sterilize it as much as just bake it onto there and cause a locus for bad stuff to grow. So avoid that. Don't be using the dishwasher.
The spores will survive. The spores live.
Exactly. And the glass might get super hot, but it's not going to get, even in the sanitary wash cycle, it's not going to get good enough. My old friend John Watson used to literally bake bottles in his oven, which
That's very old school. I remember working at Mortar in 98 and hearing stories about that, like from way back. So already by 98, it was like not done.
Yeah, don't do that. Bottles aren't that expensive, and don't risk the whole bottles exploding in your oven, because you don't want to have to deal with. And for God's sake, if you're ever going to do that, don't open the oven in the middle. You don't want a face full of hot broken glass. It's not good for anybody. But I
Star Sand.
Yeah, exactly. Period. That
That's
does
all
it.
you need. Yep.
And even if they weren't our sponsors, I would say the exact same thing. Seriously, that's exactly that's what I do. That's what I would tell people. So I tend to believe, the only reason I don't believe it's entirely bottle related is that previous bottle was not a gusher. And usually when you have an overwhelmingly phenolic beer like that, it's high carbonation and it's gushing. Yeah. It was strange to me that didn't happen, because usually in that situation, the phenols come from wild yeast or something. But I've got to believe, because of the extreme bottle variation, that had to be what happened. So otherwise, whatever happened to the beer beforehand would be present in all the bottles. Again, not to belabor the point, but use new bottles when possible, and if not, make sure you PBW and Star San the used ones to be sure that they're not harboring anything nasty.
There is the point that we got phenolic in all 4 bottles that you and I have tasted so far. So to some level of phenolic presence. To me it indicates it had to have come from the fermentation to some degree, especially. Something might have gotten away a little bit in the other bottle, but yeah.
Maybe. And the other thing, because this used to happen to me. Do you brew outside, Nate?
I do.
Do you use a garden hose for your water?
I do not.
Okay, good, because that's what I used to do, and I would have phenol flavors because garden hoses taste nasty. You avoided the obvious mistake. Do you use your water? Where do you get your water from?
So I use tap water typically, and what I'll do is I'll split my mash water and my sparge water between 2 big vessels, and I'll drop half a Campton tablet in each. I'll crush it between and do that. But,
so you're not really getting, that's plenty of and how many gallons for that half a Camden tablet?
I usually split 8 gallons between 2 vessels, so 4 and 4.
Yeah, that might even be too much Camden tablet for that little water.
A carbon filter.
Okay.
Or do both. I used to do both.
Yeah, I
mean,
don't
yeah,
use the Camden.
you
I
have
don't
to
use the
filter.
Camden tablets.
Yeah, the carbon filter will get rid of some of the chloramines if you filter it. A lot of the chloramines if you filter it really slowly. But Camden's a good way to do it too. There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, I remember reading that it's a fine way, but it's not the best way because you can fuck up your dose.
I mean,
Yeah.
just get RO water and build up your water too.
Yeah.
So, but
that takes math and
depends how much work you want to do.
Get a carbon cartridge filter from More Beer. They're like $30-$40 or whatever.
Yeah.
And run it, not super slow, but slow enough, and you'll be fine. It's easier than crushing Camden tablets, unless you want to relive your college days and you're crushing pills this
college days.
Yeah.
Your college days were a little different from mine.
Yeah.
But
all right,
I gave that a overall 28. But
okay.
I would love to hear your recipe and your process and hear more about this beer.
Yeah, let's go, Nate. Come on, tell us.
To send this one out to you guys because I was picking up a lot of flavors, 2 different flavors, and one of the odd things, this beer poured differently. So I've got this on a keg, and every time I poured it, it poured like a cider or like a chocolate milk or like a malt almost. It was like super heavy, and it would take a half a pint to a pint before things really cleared up. And it didn't matter if I just poured a tap like an hour ago or if it was 3 days ago. And that's probably where you're seeing a lot of this bottle variation. For you guys, if I'm gonna send a bottle to you guys or to competition, I'm pulling new bottles. I mean, we've got a homebrew store here that's attached to a local brewery, so I buy bottles for them. And if I'm sending them out, I'm not gonna reuse old bottles. So just coming off that keg, it was crazy the amount of variation I was seeing even off that keg, which was wild to me. I mean, I've never seen that before. One thing with my recipe here, something different I did is I did add some acidulated malt at about 4%. And I was kind of playing around there. That's, again, something I've never done before. And I don't know if that's given me some of these weird flavors or some of the weird textures I'm seeing here.
Why did you use the acidulated malt?
Again, I was just kind of reading some different things and playing around, and I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have. Again, just trying different things and playing around with my.
That's not a criticism. I'm just trying to gather some. We've all played with stuff, and 4% acidulated malt shouldn't mess with anything too much.
Yeah, if your water's super alkaline, that could help you get the balance right for certain styles. But yeah.
Do you know what your mash pH was?
I didn't record it. I think in my previous pHs I was a little high, and that's kind of why I was playing around here a little bit, and I didn't record it here. At least I don't have it in my notes. So,
and you're saying that out of your keg, just each pour you had like different viscosity.
Exactly, and that was weird. And
not carbonation. It wasn't a carbonation difference. It was a thickness.
Well, that's, so a lot of my notes here through the process here, I've got like super hazy and it seemed like I was picking up a lot of CO2 a lot of the time. And just through the process between primary and I don't know if I did a secondary here, but I just picking up it seemed like there's always a lot of CO2 with this beer, and it was always super hazy. It was some of my notes through the whole thing here. So,
right, so you have either something in the keg or something in the faucet or something along the line that you need to, in my opinion, you need to tear everything apart. And
that was going to be my suggestion. Yeah, I agree with you totally. And how long has it been since you changed the beer lines in your kegerator?
So I actually did it just before this beer. So I just bought some new lines from More Beer. Bought those quick connects or whatever. I changed everything over because I just got back into brewing here maybe a year ago. So that was one of the things recently wanted to do is transfer all those over. So that was the other kind of weird thing.
Here's a question, Nate. So sorry, let me totally interrupt you, Nate. Did you these are fresh beer lines? Is this beer the first beer that went through them? And did you bottle off the tap?
It's probably very close. It's probably very close the first time, but I ran some I'll a 5-star through there before I did everything. So I cleaned up all my old taps. I soaked everything, put everything together, and kind of ran things through. And I usually give it a rather good flush with like a submersible pump for a couple hours. So
okay, all right.
Wow. Okay.
You saw where I was going with that, because I've had some. They have beer line that says it doesn't taste funky, but it inherently it tastes a little weird the first couple pours. So it sounds like you did it right. So okay, good.
Well, that's what I was hoping with this beer line too. They said it's like one of the best ones for not having those flavor profiles. It's that was a dual flex or whatever, and
yeah, but they're still there. It's plastic. I mean, it's gonna be.
One thing I pitched when I brewed this. It was in June. I mean, Wisconsin's not always super hot, but I was doing this late at night. So like at 1 a.m. is when I finished brewing. And what I did is I left this covered with saran wrap in my garage and kind of whirlpooled and let it cool. So I let it cool for like about 6 hours overnight. And I wound up pitching the yeast pretty warm. So it was like 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And I pitched a London ESB. So I don't know if that being a little maybe too warm there hurt me with creating some of these weird flavors, or maybe just letting it sit in my garage covered overnight if it picked up something in that process. Because I don't know if that's a bottle problem. It seems like there's been something from the get-go, because the way this is coming out of the keg, it's extremely odd.
That shouldn't affect your viscosity.
Yeah. Do you crush your grains in the same place where it was sitting? I mean, is there malt dust in the air there?
No. So the last several batches I've been just buying from the homebrew store. Close, they grind them pretty much the day you buy them, type of thing.
Do you get the same phenols that Brian and Brian are talking about?
Yeah, to me there was definitely a very odd flavor, and especially those ones that poured like a chocolate milk or like a cider. And that, I lost a lot of beer in that keg because I was pouring a lot off before I would, drink one even for myself, or I was pouring you. But again,
so here's a blast from the past. Sorry, Nate.
I think he has an infection in his keg.
That may be, but did you use Whirlflock or Irish moss or any of that stuff?
Use Scottish moss, which is
I didn't use Irish moss. I used a teaspoon of Irish moss.
Okay, because you remember back in the session like 10 years ago when like Chad made some stout and he poured in like 10 times the usual amount of Whirlflock and it came out like chocolate milk. Was that you?
That was me on Can You Brew It, where Nate Smith and I were trying to make Shakespeare stout from Rogue.
Yes, that was the one.
And it was basically fucking jelly at the top. Like I put in too much Whirlflock.
Yeah, but I think that you're right, JP. I think that maybe the keg the keg needs to get torn apart and it maybe formed a pellicle, and the beer may have gotten sick. And caused that kind of gelatinous mess.
It sounds ropey to me. It sounds like there's a thing going on. But I don't know. Without tasting it, it's hard to.
It's not sour though.
Well, but I don't know. I mean, but Brett isn't sour.
That's true. It takes a long time to develop the sourness necessarily. I mean, it could be ropey.
The hard part is maybe our vocabularies are even different too, which is why we do the show, to try to sort of like solidify ideas and kind of like meet upon an agreed upon vocabulary. So I don't know. It's hard to say, but I don't know, Nate. I mean, you've heard the feedback, you've tasted the beers. It sounds about right.
Yeah. It's usually pediococcus is what will cause the ropiness and give you a sick beer. And if you look at it microscopically, it's like this little it looks like 4 little dots around each other, and then they just like chain together and make these ropes kind of in your beer and just get thick and weird. So yeah, you might have had a pedio infection in there.
Maybe,
but
the only thing that could change the viscosity.
Yeah, that's all. I agree with you. If it's not Whirlflock, it's got to be like pedio. Have you taken the posts off that keg lately and like cleaned them inside?
Yeah, I typically do that before I like. So when I finish a keg, I typically take everything apart, even take the poppets out. I clean them and I set them up like on a drying. I've got like a baby bottle rack that everything gets dried and cleaned on, and then before I put into it or transfer into it, I sanitize everything. I've got a spray bottle of sanitizer, spraying this. Not to say I missed something or left something maybe in a dip tube or or the air side or something there, and it got infected. But this is definitely an oddity for
Then-
me. So.
Then it must have gotten in the garage overnight. That's all I can think of, because you do better at cleaning your kegs than I do.
It could just be one of those things. It could just be an anomaly. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens in commercial breweries, often anyway. So,
And it's the only time it's happened to you, Nate, right?
Yeah, to this extent. I mean, I've had a couple beers go bad before. I've got that Pellicle, in a fermenter where you get those white bubbles where it's kind of powdery and it's bad. But I've never had this one where it's been in a keg and kind of had that odd texture or the odd way it pours, almost like I said, like a cider or a malt or a just super hazy and like almost had like a texture to it. It just thicker and frothier and
I mean, and it could be that the texture you're describing is overcarbonation because something is starting to be active. So who knows? But just be careful. It sounds like you're doing everything the correct way.
Yeah.
Maybe something just came in. I wouldn't necessarily freak out about it, but pay attention to it. If you notice that this is a thing, then maybe you need to even pitch change where you pitch. Our friend, Push Eject, our old friend Charlie. He was always doing his starters for his homebrew when he brewed, where in the kitchen, and I helped him sort of figure out that his starters started turning sour, and it was really weird. He couldn't figure it out. Well, his wife was activating and culturing and growing her sourdough bread starter in the same area as he was pitching his yeast, and it would just kind of overtook. It's stuff like that where just pay attention to it and recognize patterns in your brewing. Sure. If there are reasons for off flavors or whatever, then maybe change that. And it's one of those things that you don't really think about. So if there's anything else, Nate, if there's not anything else, actually, we'll let you go because it's
actually did we get a recipe or did we end up just talking too much? Nate, I don't think we got your recipe. Did we?
I liked the base recipe seemed nice, and I would like to know what went into the beer malt wise and hop wise.
I won't keep you guys too long. So again, 5-gallon batch. So I did 8.5 pounds of two-roll, 1.5 pounds of Vienna, 1 pound of 60L, a 1/2 pound of Carapils, and then 1/2 pound of that acidulated, and then a couple ounces of Special B just to kind of give it some color and some flavor. And one thing I do, maybe it's kind of a cheat on some of these ambers, is to dry it out a little bit. I did throw 1 pound of dextrose in there. It seems like it bumps up the ABV, obviously, but sometimes I find like my ambers get too sweet or too malty, and the dextrose just really kind of helps thin things out and dries it up just a hair. So this beer wound up coming up. The OG was a 1062, and the final was a 1008. So to me, it didn't feel that high. So it came in close to 7%. But again, sometimes those ambers can be deceiving. And again, I like to use that dextrose just to kind of thin things out and give it a little, to dry it out a little bit, because those ambers are, I mean, I like ambers, but sometimes they get a little malty and a little sweet for me. And that
So I wasn't wrong when I said it was slightly warming. That was actually warming at 7%. Okay.
Yep. So it's probably not high for amber ale, but it's just, again, something I like to do with my ambers, just to try to dry them out a little bit.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
Awesome.
Sounds like a good recipe. Again, a lot of malts in there and acidulated.
What were your hops that you used?
So yeah, you guys mentioned some citrusy stuff. So I did use an ounce of Citra at 60 minutes. And then I had some Hallertauer and some Fuggle. So the Fuggle was in at the last 3 minutes, and the Hallertauer was in at 15 minutes. So late additions on those two. Those were an ounce each.
That is such a homebrewer hop bill, and I love that.
That's funny too, because a Citra would normally be considered like an aroma hop a lot of times, and like Fuggles would be maybe something you'd put in earlier. But hey, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I was hoping not to get so much of that citrusy flavor, that Citra being so early. I was hoping just to get that.
You wanted it to boil out. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Get some bitterness from it. It's a high alpha hop, so you can use it for bittering. And
that's exactly yep. But I think that citrus flavor kind of carried through a little more than what I was hoping. So I had a pile of that. I want to buy a couple pounds here a while ago. So I thought, I'll use it for bittering. I don't want to probably being a little overpowering. So.
Well, I think we both wanted a little more hops, so the hops weren't bad. It was just a little bit more in the aroma would have been nice, or else the phenolic was detracting from our ability to get to the hops.
Sure.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
All right, Nate. Well, we'll let you go, man.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Appreciate your feedback.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Thanks,
dude.
Nate.
Take it easy, guys.
We'll see you.
You too.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, everybody, and we'll be right back with more Dr. Homebrew after this. All right. Welcome back, everybody. This is Dr. Homebrew. We are about to do a commercial calibration on everybody's favorite. I mean, not everybody's, but, you know, it's the seasonal fervor driver, I guess, the Bourbon County Stout. So now, which they make like 1,000 different varieties of. Ever since Goose Island got bought out, they're sort of everywhere. There's not much of a drive for them anymore because they're just, you can find them anywhere. But there's like several variations of them, which is cool. And then actually,
I was telling Cooper that there was one that the beer store I went to yesterday by my old house, they didn't have the basic one. They had one called the Caramella, which was a barrel-aged wheat wine.
gross.
They had something else that was like a single barrel version. It was like $10, like $25 for a bottle. And I'm like, there was some crazy variations. They didn't have the basic one. And then Bevmo had the basic Bourbon County, and it was fine.
Someone in the chat was saying regarding the Bourbon County beers, this is Connor, any thoughts on pasteurizing versus not pasteurized? Is there a non-pasteurized Bourbon County Stout?
Well, this bottle says, there's right here on the label, develops in the bottle up to 5 years. They even have a little flag out here. And I gotta believe that there's still some active yeast in here if they expect you to age this and have it develop for 5 years. Or is that all supposed to be just micro-oxidation?
I would say whether or not a beer has been pasteurized or not, the flavors are going to change and meld over time regardless, right? I mean, but this, I don't know. He's saying this one is pasteurized and wants to know, is that necessary or recommended? I was just saying on a homebrew scale, no, but I mean, commercial breweries can pasteurize everything. It helps with shelf stability of the beer. It takes care of anything that's living in the bottle and prevents you from having, bottle bombs later when you're mass producing this much of a beer for public consumption, and that's going to sit in various conditions around the world for so long. Maybe it's a good stabilizing factor for just that reason alone. And the flavors meld enough anyway it's 14.6% alcohol, and it's not going to be a time capsule in 100 years. Any, pasteurized or not, the beer is not going to taste the same. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. And looking quick on Google, there were some issues in like 2015, 2016 with infected Bourbon County Stout, which is
shortly after the buyout too, which was hilarious for everybody in the craft beer world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But did somebody do that on purpose?
Probably, man. You would think. All right, well, let's start hearing about your guys' thoughts. And I do not have any. I couldn't get out in time to get any, but I'm curious to check this out for you or with you guys.
This is a category 33B, would be considered a specialty wood-aged beer, and it's actually a classic commercial example for this style. So the alcohol clocks in at 14.6%, as noted on the label. I'm curious whether that came up over the years or whether it stayed remotely the same.
Or if maybe they actually measure it as opposed to estimating, calculating.
And you have to take and you have to take the booze into account as well that comes out of the barrels. And so I would imagine they're pretty exact with that. Goose Island's been around for many, many years. I remember going there back in the early 2000s, and that it was kind of the old school breweries. Like, oh, I'm in Chicago, let's go to a brewery. Okay, here, Goose Island. Cool. And they had some good classic beers. I don't know if they had this one yet. I don't remember tasting it back then. So it might not have been the right time of the season, and it was probably really rare then. It had that mystique that some of these beers now have, that came out over the years where mean, now certain Russian River beers are getting easier to get, and they're not as rare as they once were. Is it going to hold that same mystique? I laugh because it's still the same great beer that it always was.
Right. But you're not chasing a unicorn.
Yeah. No, I would hope that the business people that took over the brewery would have kept the recipes the same and everything in the beer that became kind of legendary, to what made it what it is. But they obviously changed something if they had to start pasteurizing.
Yeah. So before we get started, sort of walking through this beer, it's probably useful to note that this is a 33B specialty wood-aged beer. Because category 33 has wood-aged beer and also specialty wood-aged beer. And the notes for 33B state the styles intended for beer aged in wood with added alcohol character from previous use of the barrel. So 33A is like just a unused, raw barrel, or a barrel that hadn't been used for alcohol before. Bourbon barrel or other similar beers should be entered here. And then the base beer, the bottle itself says the base is an imperial, so it's an imperial stout aged in bourbon barrels. So this is a 20C imperial stout aged in wood in the 33B category.
And I don't want to get too far into it, but because I don't have the beer in front of me, I'm going to wax poetic about bullshit. But I feel like, what beer would you ever fucking put into a brand new oak barrel? I feel like it's inviting trouble. Yeah. I mean, new oak is so pungent and so flavorful and astringent and tannic and blah, blah, blah. Expensive. But that's why maybe you barrels. It's like, why? Who would do that? Who would do such a thing? It'd be impossible.
And I agree with you. And looking through 33A, you can use wood-based additives, wood chips, wood staves, or oak essence. Okay, so this would be maybe if you're putting in chips rather than
don't ever do
cubes. Yeah, I agree.
No one do chips. Everyone always do cube.
Yeah, always go to the cube. And then if you wanted to put it in like a raw, fresh barrel, I can't imagine you'd put it in for more than a few days. One day.
We call that new oak in the business.
Oh, new oak. Excuse me. Yes.
Well, it doesn't have to be, for a 33A, it doesn't have to be new oak. I mean, one of the commercial examples is Firestone Walker Double Barrel Ale, and they don't ferment that in new oak every time they ferment it, right?
No, but it does have, I thought
it has oak as a part of its flavor profile, but it's not an intense biting.
Well, no, but I thought one of the definitions that Brian was reading was that like it hadn't been used previously for alcohol.
Oh, gotcha.
And I guess maybe it's a little misleading because this 33A is intended for beer aged in wood without added alcohol character from previous use of the barrel. So maybe it's a reading comprehension on my part.
It's booze versus booze.
Right. Yeah, so because you have these new oak barrels that are used like in double barrel ale, if you keep reusing the same beer inside of them, you're not going to get any extra alcohol.
Right.
So that would be 33A. Yeah.
And 33A is also like Great Divide Oak Aged Yeti Imperial Stout, where they just take an Imperial Stout, they age it on oak with no booze, and it's an Imperial Stout. But it doesn't have the booze element that this one's going to have. So that's the difference between those two styles.
Okay.
So thanks for the clarification of my bad reading comprehension.
No, it was all
okay.
Sorry for eating.
Let's talk about this beer.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about this beer. By the way, I'm drinking a Hefeweizen from Opelika, Alabama. It's a brewery called Red Clay. They were on the session the other day. It's very good, by the way. It's 5.
We're probably going to get some real similar flavor profiles then in these beers that we're all
it's 5.6
tasting together.
To me, it's a little too high, but it's good.
Oh, a 5.6 Bavarian Hef?
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it so high. I wish it was like 5.4, 5.2.
5.2 would be perfect.
So yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Nice. So the Imperial Stout base style, it doesn't come through with an immediate like biting, roasty, ashy anything. It's so enveloped by the booze that's there, and the wood. When you get into the flavor, the wood just surrounds the beer. And the alcohol is very high in this beer, but it's not biting or harsh. I haven't had this year's Bourbon County yet, so this is kind of fun. It's a beer that comes out around, in the fall every year, and it's fairly easy to find, but it's a beer that you can also sit on some bottles and do vertical tastings of and have some fun with. Just get a library going. If you like imperial stouts and if you like booze aged beers with oak character to them, this is one that you would reward yourself by, instead of buying, if you're going to drink 1, buy 2, or if you're going to drink 3, buy a 6-pack and set them aside for a couple of years and build that library and have some fun with it. So, but honestly, this doesn't taste like, oh wow, this is the fresh one. It isn't aged properly. It's been aged nicely, and it's that work has been done already. Further aging will reward you, but as a starting product, it's aged pretty nicely already. It's not sharp or biting to me. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I completely agree. And the for a 14.6% beer, the aroma, just starting off here, is just so smooth and so pleasant, and it has some malty imperial stout character, and also some bourbon character and some wood to get some of that vanilla oak character. It's all very harmonious. There's no hot alcohol to this at all, which is an achievement, because you can get heat from the imperial stout, you can get heat from the bourbon, or both. And instead, the aroma is just very welcoming and pleasant and very balanced. The balance, just like it's been kind of the hallmark for 3 of the 4 beers in the last show. It's been all about, you're taking a base beer and you're modifying it somehow, and it's all about balance and not overwhelming it. Was it 33B, the impression, the second word, harmonious, a harmonious bend, or you can already tell that I've had a little bit of this 15% beer. Harmonious blend of the base beer style with characteristics from aging in contact with wood, including alcoholic products previously in contact with the wood. The best examples will be smooth, flavorful, well-balanced, and well-aged. But I agree with you. This does not come across like something that is, an imperial stout that's 3 days out of the fermenter, and it's way too bitter and hot and hasn't settled down yet. This is just a very smooth, harmonious beer.
Right, you get some roastiness. You get a nice coffee-like dark chocolate. Everything's still coming through. I would say too that right now the booze wins out a little bit over the wood. So you're looking for the balance between the style, the booze, which in this case is fresher, and it's been in the barrel, and I'm not sure if they add booze to the barrels to swirl it around. However they do it. I've never gone there and seen this process to know what they do, but there is definitely some strong booze, and that's going to be what ages out, and the oakiness will probably ascend over time. I would feel.
No, I totally agree with you, and I get the vanilla from the oak, but I don't get like a lot of that maybe tannic oak character out of this. That bite, backbone, that structure out of this, and I agree with you that that's going to be what stays in here, but it still manages to have a lot of that character, and it sometimes you have a wood aged beer and the wood is just so overwhelming, and there's just so much tannin. That's what she said. Sometimes there's just so much wood, it just gets in the way of appreciating the beer.
That's bad.
Yeah, you're chewing on the oak barrel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's got a very tannic is the main way to think of it, is like chewing on grape skins, and that puckering mouth feel, and the flavor of the oak and the aroma of the oak. If it's too sharp, it's not going to be a winner, and it has to be in balance.
Yeah. No, I would score the aroma on this very high. I would score this, probably 10, 11 out of 12. as far as the aroma goes. And the reason that would keep me from maybe going even to the full 12 is the style guidelines do talk about the well-aged character. So maybe the most successful examples in competition are going to be ones that, I don't know, maybe you made and stuck in your closet for a couple of years before you entered
Right.
it.
Well, the Imperial Stout, as it ages, is going to take on more of those vinous and wine-like kind of flavors and pruny, raisiny, fruity flavors. They're going to start rounding out after a year or two and really coming into their own. I do more aging of barley wines than I do of barrel-aged Imperial Stouts and things like that. But the flavors really do start to meld in a barley wine after like 5 years. But I would think for one of these, it might be shorter, that your reward is going to come a little sooner. After a year, some of that booze is going to smooth out a little more, and that the rich raisiny and port-like quality of the stout is going to shine through alongside what's already there and give you a little bit better presentation. So to me, the nose is a little sharp with the booze right now.
Yeah.
It's not harsh, honestly. It's like, it's for such a strong beer, it's very pleasant smelling. Like you said, it would garner a high score there, but it's gonna smooth out over time for sure.
Yeah, I'd be curious. This is a 2020 bottle. I'd be interested how long they age it in the barrel, and how long the Imperial Stout may have aged before they put it in the barrel, or they don't. I'm not seeing information about that on the bottle.
Yeah.
If you have questions or comments, call 1-800-GOOSE-ME.
Can we get them on the line? JP, call that number, please.
I would love to. If we could dial in, I would definitely.
That'd be fun. Okay. Yeah, but the little tag hanging off the edge of the bottle too says develops in the bottle up to 5 years.
I would also bet money that whoever answers that phone call won't know the question.
But it would be fun to have a conversation with them at least.
Hello, my name is Jeff. I'm here in Chicago, and I would like to answer your questions about our beer.
Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean aged? Our beer is fresh. I don't understand. That's the classic. And whenever I think about customer service for beer, I always think about the time I took the tour of the Anchor Brewing facility for like the third time, and the gal leading the tour said that beer without hops is called mead.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Well,
even at Anchor, people fuck it up. Like you never know anymore. So I doubt it. But anyway, let's move on a little bit. Let's try to.
I think you meant to say Groot, honey, but I'll take it.
Let's speed it up a little. If we can compress a little bit, that would be great. We're sort of running a little bit over.
Okay. Yeah. Appearance-wise, an Imperial Stout, it's going to be nice and this is very dark. You can see it just at the very edge of the corners that there's a little bit of a dark reddish color. It looks like the beer is going to be clear, and that the head is not, with so much alcohol here, the head is not going to be a prominent factor.
Yeah, right.
The booze and the alcohol in the beer already. You're going to see some, some legs in the beer with this strong of an alcohol. It's a monster.
Yeah.
And we're going to pound this whole bottle tonight because it's open now. But
I'm not going to waste a $15 bottles. I got to finish this. Yeah. It's I would rate the flavor very highly too, because of course the flavor varies with base style, but you've got, as you were talking about, you hit the highlights of the Imperial Stout. Then you've also got flavors that are typically present include vanilla from the wood, caramel, butterscotch, toasted bread or almonds, coffee, chocolate, cocoa, and alcohol flavors from other products previously in the wood, like bourbon. And you definitely catch a number of those things in here.
I would say, almond-like is one that kind of stands out too. And in an oak-aged beer, it definitely has some of the vanillins, and like wood aged flavor to me is so hard to describe because it has so many components to it. It's all of those things. Sometimes you can get marshmallow like, or I don't know, just something gnarly or almost sour beer like, or funky. But not sour necessarily, but just something intense and like, some sharper edges to them sometimes. But this one's pretty smooth. Yeah, flavor wise in the Imperial Stout. What I wanted to talk about the bitterness of the beer, because in an Imperial Stout, usually you start out with a pretty aggressive bitterness because it's a beer you want to, it's got so much alcohol there and so much else going on, that you need that to balance the beer. But to me, there probably is a lot of bitterness here, but it's not coming out strikingly sharp in the flavor. Like the fruitiness and the roundness of the stout along with the booze is standing up to that pretty well.
No, and I totally agree with you. And this is such a boozy beer that I'm having a little bit of a hard time picking out the bitterness from the alcohol, if that makes sense. But I get a fairly, whoa, what happened to Jason there? Oh, I'm the host now. Oh, geez, I think
He
Jason
left.
All right. Well, we'll just keep talking. We're still live on Facebook, and we'll have him come back here in a minute. We can always go back if we need to. I'm having a difficult time separating the bitterness from the alcohol to some extent, but I would call this medium to high bitterness. I'm getting a fairly firm bitterness in this beer. I might call this like a solid 70 IBU, 50 to 70 IBU beer here.
All right. Yeah. JP is coming back. He has to wait for the internet. All right. The internet is coming to JP's house.
All right. So should we kind of take a show break here and probably I think, because I don't know.
I think we're okay here. We're lost without our hosts. It's like
what can we do, man? It's just the two Brians.
What do we do now? Yeah. Okay. We're gonna sit down like we're at a competition and just judge a beer together.
I know.
Remember in the old days, we've judged beer together for a long time. I'm trying to remember what the place was, but I specifically remember an occasion where there's been a few occasions, I'm sure, where you and I just ended up judging in competitions together.
Yes.
And we always managed to see pretty well eye to eye. I always, had a good experience with you.
And same here. And frankly, that's reflected in the fact that even when we are doing these, we're judging these beers separately, remotely, we typically are within 7, I'd say 90% of the time, without even being in the same county.
Right.
We're judging these. But I would identify if I were scoring the flavor of this beer, I would be 15 plus, maybe 17.
Mm-hmm. I think I would like a little more roundness with the fruitiness and it has such a intense alcohol that the alcohol is so prominent with the booze that's very sharp. It needs a little more rounding to get into higher teens to me, so but 15
fair enough
ish is fair for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. And that fruitiness is going to come with age, and that's one of those things that and why the guidelines talk about aging being well-aged beer being a component of a classic example, because that plummy, pruny character that you're going to get from like an aged imperial stout or barley wine without even barrel aging, that comes with time.
Right. And I think that those kind of flavors play well off the booze and the oak coming up a little more, and it becomes like maybe a little drier and a little more complex and just a little richer and more rounded overall. These are kind of subjective terms, but you have to taste it, and time will reward you with certain beers. There's so many that you just want to drink fresh, but you you can't sit on this forever. It might start turning into something more like soy sauce, or it's not going to completely go horrible after 5-6 years and you're done, but there's going to become a point of diminishing returns, I think, with any
Well,
of these
what's hilarious is I was at the Stern Grove competition back when it was down at Stern Grove, like 10 years ago, and I had brewed like a 10-gallon batch of Imperial Stout, and with the goal of putting like 4 cases in my fridge and then just submitting 3 for a competition at different competitions. And I was judging something, and Beth Sangari was a couple of tables away from me, and I heard her judging something. I don't, that moment, I heard her judging some beer, and she talked about how it tasted. There was like a Crayola character to it. Like it was good, but there was a component she didn't like Crayola. That's weird. And then I got my score sheets back like a week or two later, and that was my Imperial Stout. That she was like, "Oh man!" And Beth has an amazing palate, and I didn't get the Crayola, but I chalked that up to me not being able to taste the Crayola, because I believe if Beth tasted it, it was there. So yeah, not everything that happens with aging is good.
Well, every good beer judge, is experimental in nature and just tastes everything. Like, what does this Kleenex taste like? I gotta put this dirty, stinky, nasty Kleenex in my mouth and taste it.
What's the ink in this pen like? Yeah.
What does the aluminum can taste like from this?
So it kind of like what you're saying is that a Grandmaster beer judge is kind of like a 4-year-old.
Right. They put everything in their mouth. They know what every vegetable and spice and herb and fruit and vegetable in the world tastes like, because of course you eat such a wide variety of foods. You don't just, open up a frozen burrito for your lunch ever, with this. You got to be a foodie. You've got to be.
Oh, yeah. My mom, when my mom shops, she will touch everything and she will smell everything. And frankly, that's maybe where it came from.
Right.
That my mom I'd go to the Kmart with my mom when I was 2nd grade or whatever. Mom would touch and smell everything.
The tactile combined with the olfactory. Yeah. Olfactory. Yeah, everything.
So she was obtaining data in every manner possible. It was appropriate, and I guess I do the same thing.
And now we're going to find out if we've just been speaking to nobody, or if what we said actually matters.
No, I think we were still live on Facebook.
No,
I guess I could have gone to Facebook.
You might have been. I don't know.
No, we are just the two of us. We were live, but we had seven viewers for that whole bunch of nonsense, Brian.
Well, good. Yeah, sorry about that. My our power went out in the neighborhood. We had a flash, which is weird. It's new. I don't understand.
Weird.
New neighborhood.
Well, so the thing that was recording us stopped recording.
No, well, yes, it did. That did happen. Let me turn that.
So this entire piece of brewing knowledge that we've tried to pass along to everyone, talking about how master judges are like babies in a way.
Yeah, we touch and taste everything, and
that's why I don't judge with you.
Yeah. Well, it's probably still going to be on Facebook.
Where did we leave off? I don't even know.
We were talking about flavor.
We were in the flavor. We were in the flavor. We can just start bullshitting at any point you want.
We were deep in the flavor.
Can we wrap it in like 5 minutes?
Yes, of course.
I would love to be able to kill this in 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do that.
We'll try our best.
Yeah, no, I would appreciate it just because.
So you didn't lose the recording of the beginning part of this. You just have to add to it, right?
Correct.
And you can pull audio off of the Facebook video if you need to.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to do that. So if we can, that'd be great.
That'll be an outtake for the really dedicated fans.
There you go.
Okay, let's do this. Okay.
We were talking about how aging can be positive and negative, but you get those fruity, plummy, raisiny flavors from aging.
Right.
And we also talked about reaching a point of diminishing returns. Mm-hmm. Then Brian recalled a point in time when Beth Zangari tasted one of his beers and said it tasted like Crayolas.
Oh.
Well, it had an element of Crayola. It didn't just taste like a Crayola, but yes. because I think
let's
it
pick
have
up,
gotten aged a little bit too long.
It sounds like we're talking about the conversation that I missed because the power was out. So let's pick it up for the podcast where we're talking about the flavor of this beer and just move forward on that if we can.
Got it. Well, the Crayolas part is important because I've always suspected Brian of putting Crayolas in his beers.
Only burnt sienna.
Okay, let's go.
Okay.
So let's talk about the flavor of this guy.
Okay, we're on the Bourbon County Stout, and it's in. I think the flavors are melding nicely already, and they're going to improve over time. But it's there's a lot of more biting flavors now. There's the chocolatey is sharp still. The roast is sharp still. The flavors are not melding the way they will over 4-5 years from now. So, and the fruitiness is going to come out more as it ages. I think that the mouthfeel, when you get to the mouthfeel, that might thin out a little bit over time too. And that's where you kind of get to a point of diminishing returns where it's going to get, it's for such a strong beer. It's amazing that after so many years, sometimes it can become almost watery, but it's so smooth still, and the flavors have totally melded, and you get to that point where it's like, oh, this is starting to slide downhill. But you can tell what it was and where it came from a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the same thing with a Cabernet or something, and like it gets better, and then it plateaus, and then you can tell from the color and the mouthfeel sometimes, if not the flavor, that this is good, but it was better at some point in the past.
Should have opened it a year ago. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. That happens. So yeah, the warmth is going to always stay there. I think that some of the there's a little bit of creaminess in there. It's underneath everything else, but that's going to start to go away. The biting qualities are gonna go away over time, and it's a nice beer to sit on for sure. And when I look for the best balance in a beer like this, though, I don't want it to be too boozy. And right now, to me, this is pushing that edge where it's almost a little too boozy, but they've done a good job of aging it to where the stout is at a good level. The Imperial Stout has aged to a point where the flavors have melded a little bit and are good for for the barrel treatment. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they left it in there for a good long time to contact all those get some the tannins and some vanillins from the wood and get it nice and happy. But I don't know. I'm happy with this beer. I think they do a good job with it. It might get some flack for being a mass-produced beer now and whatnot, but there's a reason it became popular, and it's one that people can get and taste along with us and throw out their own impressions of it, and sit on and taste a year and a 2-year next to the fresh sometime and see what you get, and just sit down with your friends and open the 3 bottles and do a blind tasting if you can, and just like pick out the differences between, try to guess which one's the oldest if you have 5 years even.
Right.
I totally agree with you. And the challenge from a commercial standpoint is you want to make something that is ageable. And even the label talks about age up to 5 years. But you need to have something that's drinkable out of the gate. And it's like Sierra Nevada Bigfoot, for example. Bigfoot, I think, is really good fresh, but it's very aggressively bitter, very aggressively hopped. And it's much different than the Bigfoot you're going to be drinking 5 or 10 years later. And that's kind of the art and the challenge, I think, for those beers, is to make something that's going to be good. It's going to be drinkable, and at least drinkable, and ideally good at bottling. It's going to be drinkable and ideally at least good in 5 or 10 years, and also in between. And I have a lot of respect for any home brewer or a professional brewer that can do that.
I mean, some beers have a best after date on them instead of a best buy, and it could be like 3 or 4 years.
Stone had those that were like instead of the enjoy by series, they had the enjoy after.
Do not drink this fresh. You will not enjoy it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what would you guys give it, a score-wise, comparatively to the style guidelines? Right. This is our commercial calibration beer.
I'd probably go for 38 to 40. With this beer, I would expect this to probably hit maybe a 44, 45, maybe in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I agree. Probably 39-ish, and then we can see JP.
Whoa!
Again.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about me. Keep going.
As age melds all those flavors, it's going to go and creep up into the lower 40s to mid 40s territory.
Okay.
Or higher even.
Really, it's that good. That's the thing about these beers. The potentiality sort of like outweighs their like impact, I guess.
No, I think that the Imperial Stout recipe that's there is a really good recipe.
Yeah.
Well, like I was saying, I think this is pretty good out of the gate.
Well, yeah, and that's not what I mean. It sounds like it's good out of the gate, and that's cool. But it is also one of those beers, like any of these beers, right? Like I think sometimes I feel like Imperial Stouts are a gimmick because it sort of forces you to buy several of the beer without tasting. Because if you buy one of the beer and you go, oh, this is good, you know what? This would be good aged. And then you go back and you buy 4, you buy 6 or whatever, right? And so I feel like on some level, on some like fundamental idiot level like I'm on, it Imperial Stout feels like a gimmick.
Well, you know what? Yeah. So it may be a gimmick, but it's a gimmick that works. And there are beers that you don't want to sit on and age. I'm the stupid guy that brought. I always buy Celebration Ale every year when it comes out. I've got some in my fridge. You were drinking one earlier tonight. Sierra Nevada Celebration Ale is a staple in my brewing tasting regimen. I foolishly decided to age some, and I buy it by the 12 pack, and sometimes I end up with a couple bottles. One year I had a few bottles. I'm like, oh, I'll just set this aside and see what it tastes like next year. I was kind of done with it. It was starting to slide downhill. I'm like, let's see what it does. And then so I let it age. I ended up with like 6 different vintages of Celebration Ale, and I brought it to the Northern California Homebrewers Festival. And usually we do a barley wine vertical, but before we did that, we're sitting around the campfire. I'm like, hey, look at this shit. I brought my Cellies that I've been sitting on for whatever reason for 6 years, and let's taste through these. And I poured it for people like, why would you age this beer? This is not a beer that's meant to be. It's a fresh hop beer. Why would you age this and sit on it? And like the beers that were 6-7 years old, they tasted they taken on a little syrupy edge, and the hops were gone, the part that you want to taste, and the maltiness was kind of this generic carameliness that hadn't really melded. And it's a low alcohol beer. So like stronger alcohol beers are going to age better in general than lowers. Sour beers are going to age better than non-sour beers. And there's a number of different things that determine whether a beer can be aged or not. You can age anything you want. I've tasted a 50-year-old beer that was like an Acme whatever that Dave Bratstrom brought to Homebrew Con one year.
Oh man!
When it was still called NHC, and it was from the 1950s, and then we were tasting this beer like, here's some really old shit that's been sitting in bottles forever. And it was interesting, but it wasn't something that I would have ever intentionally done. It was like, okay, I tasted this beer that was really old. Why? Because we're weird. We do things like this.
Yep, that's what happens, man. Yeah, my buddy a long time ago gave me his old library of Anchor Christmas from like the 80s. And what he failed to tell me was it was just in his garage since then. I'm like, oh, and so you're just like, after the third soy sauce bomb, you're like, you know what? Some things aren't meant to really happen. Anyway, I feel you on that. Like,
I have a friend down the street who has the same thing, but it's in his garage fridge, and I've been there, and he's offered it as a club tasting sometime that we could do. So I'm interested in that. I would taste that,
sure.
and I'm the weird one that will be like, that's interesting, or why did you sit on these beers for so long? But it's sometimes just the nostalgia for a certain beer that you drank when you were younger, and now we're getting older, and you know, it's like buying that toy you had when you were a kid, like you know.
Well, Anchor, I swear, and several years ago, it used to be that. I'll wrap this up quickly.
Yeah,
I see him sort of staring at me. Anchor used to be so highly spiced that it took like 4 or 5 years for it to be drinkable, and like a few years ago they changed that, so it wasn't as heavily spiced. And
did they though? Is it them
maybe,
or is it you?
They didn't. It could be me.
Yeah.
But I kind of, in some ways, liked it more when it was like so overpowering you had to wait.
I will say,
tastes like juniper boughs being placed in your mouth or something.
I will say, and maybe it's a factor of, as beer drinkers, maybe if you're anything like me, which I apologize if you are, but it's like once you know that a brewery has been sold to a larger brewery, the beer suddenly tastes more watered down. And with Anchor Christmas in the past few years, it sort of has been like, oh, this is sort of watery. It's not as like full, or it's not as powerful, or its balls aren't as heavy. You know what I mean? It's like it's not as
impactful. Yes.
Yeah, and so I haven't had it for a couple of years because I got it several years ago, a couple times in a row. I'm like, I don't really like it. It's not very good. This year's pretty good. I really like it, but I wouldn't drink more than a couple bottles of it because again, it still feel also a little bit. Honestly, to use a homebrew as an example, Patrick's coffee porter from the last show, it just needs a goose of crystal or something in the late mid palate where it's like just but
bring out that warmth and that balance in it. Yeah. Gotcha.
But I'm not saying it's like the new owners or whatever, because I'm sure nobody really cares. Like you're not gonna shave, pennies off the bottom dollar by cutting the crystal malt. Like it's the most ridiculous thing.
I don't think they have malevolent intent. They bought the brewery and they're trying to keep everything going like they have, and they built a cool tasting room. But I'd like to taste the new one and see. Like I always thought, Anchor Christmas has always been a little overspiced. It's not a beer that I love to drink all the time, but when you get to taste it, it's always been an interesting beer, and they change it every year. And it's just a unique tradition in the Bay Area from a brewery that was brought back to life by, Fritz Maytag, and has such history to it. And it's a beautiful brewery. We're talking about touring it. And so,
it's cool. I love it.
Goose Island, same thing, kind of an old school brewery that's been around for many years and is one of those
but it's still owned by Budweiser. So
in the Midwest,
taste in my mouth. Yeah.
It matters how the beer tastes in your mouth. Did they keep the recipe the same and keep brewing the same good stuff?
Yeah.
I think this is a good solid beer.
With that kind of stuff, I look at it like where's your dollar? What's your dollar supporting? And the amount of lawsuits against Anheuser-Busch and the amount of stories you hear about Anheuser-Busch pushing craft beer out, it's sort of like you're giving your money to a larger corporation to then
you can focus on the business side of it, but you can also look at the technical side of course. How many homebrewers do you know that could produce something that tastes exactly like Bud Light? Maybe one. No. It's hard to do because there's nothing to hide behind, and they do a great job at creating a consistent product. They have quality control technicians that analyze the hops and do the perfect blend for the year to get everything right, because agricultural products they're dealing with, they want their beer to taste exactly the same every year in and year out. That's admirable.
Yeah.
It's corporate. It's over. I'm not mad. I won't. I'm the same guy that,
I'm joking. Yeah, I'm joking with you.
Screw your fizzy yellow beer, you goddamn, I get you, man. We're just having a conversation here.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, we're gonna wrap it up here. It's getting a little late here at the Dr. Homebrew headquarters or something. I don't know.
We're drinking very strong beer, and we're talking out of our asses right now.
Yep. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you to Nate for hanging on again, and thank you to Goose Island for making Bourbon County Stouts for the boys to drink, and then sounds like it's a good beer. And very, very, very close to style. And the farther you get away from the born on date, the closer it becomes to the style. So that's it's hard to find that, honestly. Anyway, thanks a lot for tuning in, everybody. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Looking for a few good beers.